to the Talking Podcast. We are back again this week. Super happy indeed. And yeah, so my name is David Mubita and I'm the host. You can call me the People's Choice. We are having somebody very nice, interesting, and of course, with a lot of experience in the topic of discussion. This is something that influences our daily life activities. The decisions that we make must somehow be based on this topic of discussion. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel, which is The Talking Podcast. Follow us also on Instagram, The Talking Podcast. Stay tuned and enjoy the conversation. Welcome to the Talking Podcast. I'm super excited.
Thank you.
Finally to get to meet you. Yeah, I've only had the privilege of hearing your voice when you're teaching in class. So yeah, I'm happy that I'm able to see you today.
All right, good to meet you.
Yeah.
And I hope this goes awesome.
Exactly, interesting. So first, maybe you can give yourself like an introduction to maybe our audience out there or our listeners. Who is this guest that we have today on the Talking Podcast?
I'm not sure where to start. In the context of ALU, I'm from Ghana. That's where I was born. I usually say I'm an African. So I was born there. I left Ghana in 2009 to Kenya to do my master's. And then from Kenya, I went to South Africa for my PhD. And then from there, several places. And then I heard about ALU when I took a break in Ghana, and then I joined in 2009. And then I was told you're teaching research because you've been doing that for a very long time. So
yeah.
I'm like, okay, that should be fun. And then I joined. It's been an amazing journey, interesting, also sad because it's like every cycle you get used to all this bunch of people and then they leave. And then you're still here, and then a new bunch comes, you get used to them, and then they leave again. But I think it's part of the adventure. Mm-hmm. So, and then here I am. So a lot of great experiences have also been in that same cycle of working at ALU. So
yeah, very interesting introduction. I love the part you were mentioning about the PhD, the masters. This is actually in line with the topic for what you've been doing is in line with what we are looking at today, which is research, as a tool to be able to collect data that is able to help us make informed decisions. So to begin with, how has research been able to help you in your career so far? And how would you describe your life as a researcher?
I started very early, though not as the main researcher, but getting exposed to the field of research. That was way back in 2007, 2008, when an uncle of mine opened a research center. Okay. So he was researching into African traditional religion, African history, slavery, African artifacts and all that stuff. So this guy never finished high school.
Wow.
I was amazed at the amount of collection he was
But they were able
together.
to do research.
Yes. So
wow.
He had the ability to bring people together, investigate what is going on. He went through a long process of reading lots of books, trying to understand what is there in literature, and then using on-the-ground data, interviewing people to compare to what he found in literature and be able to write about it. So that was very intriguing for me, and joining in as one of the people that helped collect some of the data and also showcase some of the outputs of his research. That was my first introduction. And then he had visitors from all across the world. Students came from the USA, Germany, so many other countries to learn. So I go with some of the students to help them when they had to collect data and interpret whatever questions they had, and then the responses they get from the participants. So that was my earliest exposure to, to research. And it was pre-high school. So you can imagine from that period on, it was a very long process. And the research wasn't something that I decided I'm going to be a researcher. I don't know if anybody decides that's what they want to be.
Okay.
It's more like you're going to be someone who is on a fact-finding mission or want to use data for the purpose of informing decisions. So it's about the decisions, it's about the data, it's about the knowledge creation. But you don't really set out and say, my career, I'm going to be. I don't think we even have such in universities.
Yeah.
But that's how my journey began, and then it moved me from one place to the other. But my biggest jump was from my undergraduate. So undergraduate required for you to conduct research. Every semester, we had to do some of the research, go to communities, collect data, analyze and present results. And the magic of being able to collect data, bring all together, analyze, and tell people stories about their data we collected from them. Like, wow, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That for me was sort of like magic. So it piqued my curiosity, and once you are in that academic circle and you become friends with professors and stuff, they'll push you into that direction. So all the support I give them when they are doing their research projects, consultancy stuff, and all of that push me in that direction. So I just kept going, and I'm still on that track.
Yeah, nice. So if you look at your background, like you've been like, you have worked with different kind of people, and as you are right now, you are a facilitator here at beautiful University of African Leadership University, and you have interacted with different kind of students. How would you say, or like, what role does research play in a student's life or in a student's journey?
For ALU students, well, for the broader sense, talking about education, my experience in education, students tend to think of big ideas, right? Broad, big ideas, right? But one of the things that propelled the so-called developed world into where they are now is being able to use data, right? So when I joined ALU, thankful for them, they already had a facilitator who was also really good at research, Mr. Depoju. So I just continued in his footsteps. But one of the interesting things I realized is that when you ask students in their second year, what is your mission? Or like the sort of recommendations they make are quite broad, right? So research helps students most of the time to begin to delve in deeper into what they perceived as a problem that you want to solve, right? For you to make it in life, in any aspect of your life, you want to be rich, you want to be successful in your career, you have to find a problem that is unique, that stands out, that people actually want solved, and then solve it. But how do you solve a problem without actually going through the process of acquiring data and understanding the problem and analyzing and comparing with what other people have done, and then say, oh, so this is what is unique, right? So research helps students map their mission properly and be more specific, to the point where some of them begin to question, actually, this wasn't really a problem that I should handle. And thankfully, research continues up to when you finish your capstone period. So before you get there, people are able to map out and clearly articulate now what they want to work on as capstone, which helps them afterwards when they leave ALU and all that.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So could you say research is like an easy thing to do? Or because I'm a student and yeah, we have done quite a number of research, and but personally, I have also my own experience with it. But what is it that is mostly talked about from students when it comes to research? How do students view research itself?
That's a very difficult course. So from their perspective, which I understand very well, is it's difficult because you've been molded to just see something and say, this is the problem I want to solve, without understanding data, right? We have sort of like a general problem with that, like our politicians, our leaders in various areas, like, oh, this is a problem, our problem, the road is bad, so let me just pour something on it and construct the road. I'm like, okay, but are you thinking about how the road will impact the people around the community, right? Are you designing a road that will meet their needs, or you're designing a road because you saw it somewhere, right? So initially, like, this is really difficult, but as you go along the way, you go through the process. Things like literature review, that's like one of the dreaded, even people who are core researchers, that's something we wish we could escape.
I remember in my first year, we did research review, like literature review, where we could research about this particular case, and then at the end of the day, you need to to write up a summary, give it really full details. I think that was hard for me also, and I understand that you're also mentioning it.
So people dread literature review, but literature review, as the same as the entire research, can be fun, right? It's just because they are not used to it. That's something interesting that one student said to one student from South Africa. She was like, research is so easy. Why is it that the other students cannot get it? I'm like, how? Why do you find it easy?
Yeah.
We've been doing it since high school. I'm like, that's an excellent idea, right? If people got used to it and it became like something that you do right from even primary school, it will become so easy for people to identify problems, research into them, and say, okay, so this is the actual solution I found, and the solution is based on data that I've analyzed, right?
Yeah.
So that will enrich the sort of type of solutions we see on the continent. So even if someone did research in primary school and then in high school and then decided not to go to the university, they still have a powerful tool to be able to solve problems around them, right? By thinking of it in terms of data, right? So if I'm back on research, I'm able to get data, and I'm also able to look into what other people have done across the world, right? Because literature review requires you to see what has someone done, not only around you, but all over the world, and then build on that, create your own unique solution. And therefore, it can be difficult, the process, but it depends on the mentality you go with as well. For me, like I'll say, the most fun thing for me about research is the data collection. Because you got to go to the field, you spend time with people, you talk to them, you make observations.
Yeah.
If you had to collect samples, imagine collecting soil samples and digging holes and collecting soil samples. That
must
is
be
fun.
funny. Yeah,
It is fun.
Nice. So, as somebody with really vast experience in this, what would you say, or how can one really, especially students, go about building up their skills into research or becoming good researchers? How should they go about that?
Inquisitiveness. Be inquisitive. The more inquisitive you are, the more networks, right? And then resources and then processes come along your way. If you're not inquisitive, you're not going to go anywhere as a researcher. You might not even be a researcher, because research is about asking questions, being curious. And the more curious you are, the more issue you identify to conduct research with. And it doesn't matter what field you find yourself, from from art to physics, chemistry, everybody does research. So if you're a curious person, you are curious. You don't have to worry about funding. You don't have to worry about where is this going to lead me. You don't worry about that. You just keep getting curious. Like, this is interesting. How does it behave this way? Why does this machine work that way? Why are these people behaving that way? And that is the beginning of your research journey. No matter how difficult it is, the quest to find an answer to that curiosity will drive you on and on.
We're talking about research, in case you just joined us. Yeah, must be really an interesting topic, because it's something that we all must pay attention to, because research, I know that people may have been thinking of it as a hard thing, that one could ever do, but actually he's putting it in a very light way that we could enjoy. It's fun actually if you really invest so much time in it, and it's really good. So yeah, we're looking at research and make sure that follow along with you. So to move on, what kind of influence does research has on data-driven decision-making processes?
All right, good question. So there are people who focus only on the data, right? So someone else has to collect the data and then they use it. So research can be either, broken down into various pieces where someone does every part, or there are people who are committed to the entire process from A to Z. But in any part of the process, someone has to do some part to assist you, right? So in decision making, in a lot of decisions that we make, whatever industry or whatever we find ourselves, like for example, if you're working with Coca-Cola, and I remember two of my colleagues from my undergrad, when they graduated, they went to apply for a job at Coca-Cola in Ghana. So there were lots of people to interview. So I asked them, what is special about you?
Yeah.
So these guys took time before they came to the job interview to collect data about Coca-Cola consumers in a particular area.
Wow. Not about Coca-Cola as a company or as a business.
No,
but
they don't have access to that data. They only have
Okay.
access to the user data because so they went ahead and collected data. So during the interview, they designed their graphs, the outputs of the data analysis, and started showing them. This is what we found out. Based on your customer response, this is what you can do and do that to improve your service here and there, here and there. They got hired on the spot, and the other people were chased out. Right?
Okay.
So using data, you can be able to transform a company, or if you don't use that data very well, you might collapse the company. Right? So a lot of, even before you start any endeavor at all, if you have good data, especially for, I used to say the case of Rwanda. Rwanda is a green field. There's a lot that is not here yet, right? But for you to start anything, you need to understand your users. And the only way to do that is to have the data, right? So from as low as a woman selling in the market to as high as the president of a nation, data is very important in making decisions. If you don't have data, you make speculations. And speculations are try and error, which result in a waste of resources. So data-driven decisions make sure you also reduce waste in the long run, and also make sure you're actually starting something that is based on knowledge you have and not just what you assume people need.
What do you refer to by waste in this case?
All right. So waste is, let's say, it's a common knowledge that we have limited resources. We don't have finite resources where if there's money available to a country, it's not abundant for them to do anything they want. They have limitations. So your budgets, let's say your health sector has a budget of $1 billion for this year. But based on the taxes money you've collected and the loan and everything, you can only afford to give them $500 million for the year. So the question for the health ministry is, how do we efficiently spend this money without wasting it? So which means you have to select which is most highest priority. So for example, if we're in a COVID period, right, and the hospital says we have $1 billion need, right? So you ask them, okay, what is the money going to? So we have money, we need to buy this new equipment, we need to train staff, we need to do this and that. So you ask, okay, we have 500 million. How are you going to spend it? So you need to prioritize. Now, for you to prioritize, you need to have information before you do that prioritization. Right? How many people are visiting your OPD, outpatient department? How many patients are going into the kidney stone surgery department? How many? So once you understand your population, the number of people that come in, and the highest needs of people, then you begin to take out certain things. So, okay, let's make sure this $500 million is actually spent on the most essential things. At the same way too, let's say you ask for 1 billion, they're like, oh, we have 2 billion this year. Here's 2 billion for you, right? So you say, okay, then I want to do a lot more beyond the 1 billion that I budget for. So the question is, how do you use that 1 billion? So you begin to say, okay, in order not to waste the money, because you might not have it all the time, in order not to waste the money, how do we make efficient use of this resource so that later on when it's not there, we will not suffer? Does that make sense? So decisions, okay, there's COVID. So the Rwanda government is like, okay, how much can we spend on vaccination? When we spend on vaccination, we have indirectly spent on the economy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So they spend a lot of money, they push, they develop all system, they are very comprehensive, and they got people vaccinated. Over 95% of people in the city of Kigali are vaccinated. Now that's a record on the continent, even in the world, right?
Exactly.
So they did that, and consistently when Omicron came and people were shutting down everything, Rwanda just kept their timeline stable because they know people have been vaccinated. So the rate at which people, yes, the cases went high, then straight down again. So they're able to say, okay, now let's do 4 a.m. to 12 midnight because they have data and they're able to make those decisions, and therefore reducing the amount that they will have to spend later as a result of wastage. Does that make sense?
Exactly. So I totally agree with you, and I love the fact that these days now, almost each and every decision that is being made out there is really like thorough research that was either taken, conducted for like different kind of, even businesses, organizations to come up with, informed decision. And I really could say that right now, I think it's really important that even if you do not want to study or to do research as maybe in your school, but this should be a common skill that everybody can have, I think, because
True.
any decision that you might want to make should at least be based on data that you have, and that data it has to be collected through research. Great stuff there. So before we let you go now, what kind of career opportunities can be found in research or that are in research, and how does one go about building their career into research, becoming a researcher, like you are?
Thank you. So like I said from the beginning, nobody gets up and say, I want to be a researcher. In fact, the title of researcher, it doesn't really exist as much as in a certain space. So let's say, for example, if they advertise the jobs and say they are looking for a research manager or director of research, the person who gets employed didn't necessarily study research from
Really?
undergrad. No, there's
Wow.
no such thing.
Okay.
So research is something that you do along the way in several areas, right? But once you practice it over and over again, like people who are professors, or you have a master's, or you've done a PhD, you cannot do a PhD without doing research. Well, right now there are PhDs that are taught you don't need to do research, but people usually don't look for such people. They just ignore them. Right?
Yeah.
But the PhD, the essence is for you to be a doctor of philosophy. Doctor of philosophy doesn't mean you're a specialist in a particular field. It means you are able to think in a philosophical way, trying to understand the meaning of things, or the reason why things behave the way they do. So you can throw any subject at the person, and instead of them just giving you a direct answer, we begin to think of origin, significance, why not, how, right? So when you're able to answer those questions first, okay, you're a PhD holder. So career-wise, right, you can be someone who is in there. So my undergraduate was in development policy planning. My master's was in integrated watershed management. My PhD is in the civil engineering department. So you see the diversity where I am. But the thing that is a trend throughout all of them is research. You do your master's, you have to do research. We have a course in research methods, and then you do some research. Then when you finish your undergraduate thesis, you write a thesis, research. Master's, when you're done, you write a thesis, research. PhD, research. All of them are research. So you have a research skill without the degree title saying so. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I tell Global Challenges students that when you're applying for a job, there's no job that will say we are looking for a Global Challenges. If there's such, I haven't heard yet. So they will ask for, let's say, project manager, but then they require specific skills, right? It's the skills that you pay attention to, not the title of the job. Once you match the skills, then the job is fit for you, because whatever skills they are mentioning, you have learned those. So they'll say, we want someone with research skills. I'm like, okay, I have that, checkmate, all right? I want someone with team, able to work with a team. Someone who is able to manage a team, someone who is able to analyze data, someone who is able to do critical thinking. So when you look at our module structure, the core skills and all those skills listed, those are the exact things that are usually mentioned in a job advert.
Okay.
So when you're applying for a job and you're looking for, the title has to be research something before you might never get a job.
Right.
So you look at the skills, the individual skills they're looking for. And that is what matches what we actually teach you individually, not even specific courses. If I'm teaching you research, right, there's an aspect about philosophy. There's nothing, you might not use it at all, right? But when someone says in a job advert, critical thinking, philosophy allows you to think critically and ask the right questions. So you check that box, you're that. And then also a topic like literature review. So someone said, we require you to be able to collect information from different people, analyze it, and present the results to us. You know how to do literature. You know how to take literature from different sources and put it together and create that. So for someone who is a researcher, you have 10, 15, 20 career paths in there as a researcher already.
That's an advantage. Come on. I mean, I definitely, after this, I'm becoming a researcher.
So that's the good point for when we started. Even IBT at some point, like, we also have to do research.
Yeah.
And computer science, we have to do. So computer science started competing for research. I facilitated for a semester in there. So increasingly, all institutions are beginning to realize that some people just have one skill in the research process, but they're beginning to realize how important it is to have a whole research team, a research department, right? So that's a department that most institutions that don't have it usually suffer.
Yeah.
Because it takes research for you to make a proper argument. So for career path, you have a lot of opportunities. The disadvantage for you might be that sometimes you need to argue your way out to explain to them why this is significant. That's why ALU students, there's some form of pride you feel that students can make their point to you. They argue and say, no, based on the data, based on this and this, I think your department could use my skills for that. Yeah. Once students are able to do that, they can get through any door whatsoever.
Yeah. Amazing stuff there. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that knowledge with us and your experience. It's really been nice. And guys, I for me personally, I feel motivated and inspired actually to do a lot of research, guys. Like, you need to have information, like you need to be an informed person, and you can only do that if you invest into researching, collecting data. You know, it doesn't have to be until you're working on a certain project to do research. I think even in a daily, you should at least, collect data. I think I'm not an expert, but I think research doesn't mean you have to like go and do research online, or maybe go maybe in the field or what. But you can do research with somebody near you, right?
Yes, you can.
Asking something from them.
Asking the right questions, being curious, asking follow-up questions, trying to understand.
That's research.
That's you doing the research.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming through here on the Talking Podcast. Mr. Kwame, it's been a pleasure to have you, and we hope we're going to bring you back again soon in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. This has been the Talking Podcast. Yeah, my name is David Mubita, aka the People's Choice. Thank you so much for staying tuned with us. Yeah, let's get in touch again till next week when we bring you another epic episode on the show and with another special guest. Don't forget, this is the fastest growing digital talking platform in Africa, where we connect people with the community. You are the community. And of course, we bring different kind of experts so that they're able to share their knowledge, experience, and of course, inspire you guys out there. So yeah, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, which is on Instagram, The Talking Podcast. On YouTube, subscribe to our channel, The Talking Podcast, and also go search on different kind of podcasting platforms, which is Apple Podcast, The Talking Podcast, Spotify, The Talking Podcast, as well as Google Podcast, which is The Talking Podcast. Yeah, we're out till next week. Bye.